Trump's big, beautiful bill has officially passed, and with it, millions of Americans now face the risk of losing their SNAP benefits and health benefits, things that, realistically speaking, you kind of need. You need food and you need health benefits. And so, to break down the real world impact of this legislation, I sat down with Ohio Congressman Greg Landsman. This is a candid conversation talking about how, yes, this will affect millions, even some of which who actually voted for President Trump. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me today. I absolutely appreciate it. I know you're super busy right now, and a lot just happened, especially in the House and the Senate. Now that's been signed. Obviously, we're talking about the big, beautiful bill. And I know how very vocal you've been against this big bill because there's a lot of things in it that's going to be hurting a lot of Americans. So now that it's passed, Donald Trump has signed it. Could you walk me through your thoughts on what you see as the most destructive part of this bill?
Yeah, the fact that it's taking all of this wealth and transferring it from working people, hardworking people, seniors to the wealthiest people in the country. And that's been part of a 50-year process by Republican politicians to sort of rig the economy and the tax system in a way that really undermines the vast majority of Americans at the benefit or for the benefit of the super wealthy. They get everything they want. And the idea is that it will create economic growth. This notion of trickle down economics, where if you just give all the money to the folks at the top, it'll trickle down. Except it doesn't, and it hasn't, and it's why the economy is so fundamentally broken and frustrating for the vast majority of people because they're working harder than ever, and the system doesn't reward hard work; it rewards wealth, and that's the biggest problem with this bill is that it doubles down on this failed policy of giving all of these tax breaks to the super wealthy at the expense of us. So, for example, in this bill, to pay for these tax cuts for the super wealthy, millionaires, billionaires, and big corporations, they're going to take healthcare away from 17 million Americans, food assistance away from 5 million children, seniors, and veterans. They're cutting energy subsidies, which will result in maybe 1 million, 2 million people losing jobs in construction, building these new energy projects. Energy costs will go up, healthcare costs will go up, food costs will go up. So it's bad for everybody except for the super wealthy. And again, that is part of, or at the core, really, of what's so broken about this economy.
And, we talk about trickle down economics. Back 20, 30 years ago, the mindset was always, yes, you give tax breaks to the wealthy, and then everyone down below would start feeling some of that. But now that greed has really taken over, we're seeing companies buy back their stock rather than giving breaks to the younger classes or these lower classes. I guess when we're looking now at this bill and seeing that people are now going to be hurt really bad about it, what can the average American do? Because now a lot of people either felt lied to, that they thought this big, beautiful bill was going to help them. And now they're not, even though we kind of told everyone in the beginning. And there's other people who've been like screaming it from day one, like, hey, we told you this is what was going to happen here. So what does the average American do about this?
Force Congress to fix it. I mean, tell Congress to fix it. Either get this Congress to fix it or get a new Congress. I mean, those are the options. But Congress is going to have to fix this, and the fix is pretty straightforward. Reset the tax rates for the super wealthy to pre-2017 numbers. I mean, it's not that big of a difference. I mean, you're talking about for the highest wage earners going from 37% to 39%. I mean, it's something small like that, but it produces enough revenue to restore all the healthcare cuts, for example, and do the same for the big corporations. Just fix the tax code at the top and restore all of the healthcare cuts. No one loses their healthcare. No one loses their food assistance. The energy subsidies are put back on the books, and there's no deficit spending. All all you get in this, with a fix is everybody gets the tax relief that they need, right? So, workers, seniors, small businesses, farmers, they get tax relief, and we can pay for that by having the folks at the top pay, their taxes like the rest of us. It really is a simple fix.
Yeah, I just to me, it's we have to now look to see when we come up in a few years, really get a change and vote, get people out there to vote. In which, you were a former teacher here. We're getting a lot of younger generations increasingly getting interested in politics, but for the most part, when they're looking at these politics, it's confusing. Like the big beautiful bill, every day it seemed like something was changing, something was new. As a former teacher, what do you suggest to the younger generations that are now getting involved in this and just getting really confused? Like, how do they understand this better? How can they learn better so that when these bills come to the table, they can understand it? Because, I mean, you looked at this bill. How many pages? Over 1,000+ pages?
Yeah.
How is the average American, or at least the youngster who's coming up, is going to understand these things?
Yeah, I mean, look, some of it's just research and finding trusted sources, which is difficult. But I think the key is to get involved in some community locally, and I think that's tougher. It was a little bit easier for me when I was growing up because we didn't. Yeah, but it sounds so old, but we didn't have, the internet for, most of my childhood. So like you had to go join groups. But I think there's just an enormous amount of value actually in being part of a group or groups. And, for a lot of young people, I'm seeing them join groups of older folks, right? Because like,
Yeah.
for not all of our young people is fired up about politics as I am now. I certainly wasn't when I was young. So, I think when you find a home and people that you can trust, that makes all the difference in the world. I think doing this on your own is really tough and unnecessary. And so that's my piece of advice, which is like, go out there, find some groups, find a home, find community, and then you have you have an army of folks that are going to fight this with you.
Now, as this bill was going through committees and going through debates, we were watching this all kind of play out in front of it. As someone who was actually actively involved in this, did you feel like there was actually any compromise in this bill? Did you feel like we were just stuck from the get-go? It's like they're just going to steamroll right through us, and it is what it is.
Yeah, in fact, this is one of the arguments I made during the 26, 27 hours of debate that we had in Energy and Commerce, which is where we debated the Medicaid cuts. Is I said, look, over and over, I said, I don't think you want to do this. Like, I don't think there's a person in this room that can say, no, I really want to cut health care for the people in my district to pay for tax cuts for folks I don't even know and who don't even care, who don't even need the tax cuts, who aren't asking for them. I think what happened was you got an assignment, and that assignment was hyper partisan. It was pass Trump's bill, this $4 or $5 trillion bill. It makes permanent these tax giveaways to the folks at the top. That's the huge expense. And in order to pay for that, you have to find $800 to $1 trillion in cuts to healthcare, to Medicaid. That was the assignment. And so they're stuck because they don't know how to stand up to these folks, to Trump, or they just don't want to. But if the assignment had been a bipartisan or less partisan assignment, I guarantee you we would have come up with a bill that instead of 35% of Americans supporting, 70, 80% of Americans would have supported, because we would have, in a bipartisan way, provided tax relief to everybody that needs it, even more so, like way more for the child tax credit,
Uh,
actual tax cuts for seniors, paying into Social Security, all of the things that Americans have been saying they need in order to pay all their bills. They get all of it, because we're gonna build a tax code based on what the people we represent need. So super bipartisan, and we'll pay for it by adjusting the tax rates at the top so everyone keeps their health care, no cuts to food assistance, no cuts to, these energy subsidies. And on waste, fraud, and abuse, every year, the GAO, which is the Government Accounting Office, they put out a report on waste, fraud, and abuse. We could, in a matter of days, come up with an agreement on all of the actual waste, fraud, and abuse that we're going to put into this bill. And the American people would have gotten tax relief. They would have gotten a tax code that makes much more sense. And they would have kept their health care, their food assistance, energy costs wouldn't go up. And we would have actually tackled waste, fraud, and abuse, but that would have required a different assignment.
And because that wasn't the right one, that's just once Mike Johnson says, guys, this is what we're doing here. That's it. We're running with that. Which is, I
Correct.
mean, for someone who obviously represents Ohio and everything that you've been doing, you're great, by the way. I've been following you for many years. You advocate for families, for kids. And I guess the question is, you're now in this Congress where it kind of feels like you don't really have much hope in trying to get things passed. So right now, I know you're working on many big things. A, how do you stay hopeful that
Mm.
you can get things done? And B, what are you doing to stay hopeful? Because clearly there's other bills going on at the same time. Obviously, we only hear whatever's being screamed in the news. So what are you doing now to keep your things alive, staying hopeful, saying, hey, we're going to stay focused and we're going to get this one thing done?
Yeah, I find a couple things that I believe I can get done, and I make sure I get those things done. And sometimes they're smaller, so there's a few bills that are important. They're not huge, transformative bills, but they're important. And you make sure that you're working those and that you get them not just passed out of committee, but onto the floor, and then you get a companion bill in the Senate. I know this is, in the weeds, but this is like if you want it to be law, you got to like follow the whole process. And just
Yep.
like you can't just get it passed on the House side. And in the last Congress, I found this Social Security Fairness Act, which was a bill that had been sitting in Congress for 25 years. And it had 360 co-sponsors, and it essentially would take the people like, my peeps, like, former teachers and police officers and firefighters and letter carriers, all these public servants who had been paying into Social Security, but they don't get it back because they have a state pension. And so like the federal government was stealing about $20 billion a year from them. And I made it my mission to get this thing passed, worked with the co-leads, convinced them after a period of time that like the only way that we're going to get this thing passed 25 years later is to force a vote, is to do a discharge petition and just, like essentially it's a game of chicken with the speaker. And we did it. We got it on the floor. It took us about 2 days to get 218 signatures, enough signatures to get it on the floor. We passed it, and then there was a bunch of work to get it passed in the Senate, and now it's law. And as of yesterday, 100% of the eligible folks are seeing their Social Security showing up in their paychecks. I mean, you're talking about almost $20 billion a year going to teachers, firefighters, police officers, and letter carriers. Like, you find something like that and you put everything you have into it, because at the end of the day, you can get pulled into the everyday chaos of this hyper partisan, awful political environment we're in. And I think you have to put up a fight. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a fighter, so I show up for those fights. But you have to dig in and work and get things done for your own sanity, but more importantly, because the people that are relying on you to get things done need you to get things done.
Which, I mean, you kind of give us hope in that. By you saying that makes us hope like, look, this big, beautiful bill passed. It's not big, it's not beautiful, it's something really bad. But if we get more congressmen like you that are willing to fight for these things, yes, it's not going to be tomorrow or next month. It could be the next Congress. But if we get more people like you, we can change some of the things that have passed that have now made things horrible or potentially horrible come 2026 for many Americans. This was part 2 of my conversation with the congressman. In part 1, we talked about Ukraine. Most importantly, what things are looking like on Congress's floor. Is there chatter? Where are they at when it comes to getting some kind of sanctions bill passed? And then we talked about the tens of thousands of Ukrainian children who have been abducted. I'll link that is in the description of this video, and I'll be sure to keep you guys updated on news from around the world, so please do share my videos and follow me for more.